Thank you for joining the session today. Originally, this panel, we were hoping to pull together a panel of some of our colleagues around the world that are leading up specific initiatives around wilderness. However, due to time zone conflicts and stuff like that, we shifted a little bit. And with us today, it is an honor to pull both of them in. And they were planning to join anyways, but we're going to try to speak to some of those voices that aren't able to join us today. Some of our colleagues from Germany, and some of our colleagues from around the world will be mentioning as well. But with us today, I'd like to introduce up front with is Amy Lewis, the managing director of the Wild Foundation and wild.org, and Bob Dvorak, the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Wilderness and an adjunct professor at in Michigan, in Michigan. So, with that, the just so everybody's aware of the agenda today, we're going to share a little bit of an overview of the Wild Foundation and our efforts, international efforts, and around the world for wilderness conservation and stewardship and protection, which will include giving a highlight of the World Wilderness Congress, some of the outcomes from the recent World Wilderness Congress that was hosted in the Black Hills in South Dakota late last year. And we'll share some of the ongoing international efforts that we have, including the IUCN Wilderness Specialist Group, some of our colleagues in Cameroon, some of the work that they're doing over there, and our colleagues in Germany, as well as the International Journal Wilderness and several of the recently published stories that we would like to feature and invite you to explore as well. So with that, I'd like to invite Amy Lewis to give an overview of, what is the Wild Foundation, and also the World Wilderness Congress, and why was it hosted in the Black Hills last year, Wild 12, and also what are some of the major outcomes?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. And I just want to thank everybody for being here and for the your values around wilderness and how you put those into action and manifest them into the world. And on that note, I think there's kind of two realms we would in social sciences we call this the dual ecological system, dual ecological and social system. There's two realms in which we have to protect, defend, and advance wilderness. And the first realm is the physical realm and the ecology and the physical processes that actually manifest wilderness as a natural phenomenon. But the second realm is the realm of concepts and ideas. And Wild spends and has spent a good amount of its time in protecting and defending the wilderness concept in that realm and expanding it so that those people who are able and willing and have the passion around wilderness around the world to defend and protect it are empowered to do so because there is wide social acceptance and policy acceptance around wilderness. And so we do have some on the ground projects and always have had on the ground projects, the Molly Elephant Project, our current Rainforest Life Ways project with the Yawanawa, where we're working on establishing a 1,000,000-acre ecocultural corridor. Wild Sapmi, which we're just getting off the ground, which we're hoping, working with Sami reindeer herding communities, we can exact a ban on old growth deforestation. But really, our flagship projects have been around the World Wilderness Congress and the Wilderness Specialist Group and the IJW, convening an international community of wilderness policy experts, practitioners, advocates, you name it, in order to create the social impetus and the demand for more wilderness and more policies that actually allow for society to work on wilderness in a structured and proactive way. So in that vein, prior to Wild 12, as we were looking at convening the 12th World Wilderness Congress, we asked ourselves the question, what does wilderness as a concept really need right now? what are its challenges, and what's really preventing wider adoption? And our answer to that question was that a lot of the things in the past that have been done really for colonialism and imperialism, but have oftentimes been done in the name of wilderness as kind of cover, we needed to address those, and we needed to do so in a sector-wide way in order to overcome the um, totally and completely justified resentment and skepticism around wilderness and its practitioners. So we worked with the Chichangu Lakota Treaty Council in the Black Hills. They became the host of Wild 12, and we really focused on this idea of creating dialogue around a reimagining and reinterpretation of wilderness and informing the wilderness concept in a very structured and formal way with Indigenous thought, Indigenous ideas, and understanding that more. So there were 12 resolutions. One of the amazing things about the World Wilderness Congress is that it's the longest running public international forum, meaning we make decisions there, collective decisions, we make policy there, and you don't have to be a member like you do with the UN or the IUCN to vote. You get to participate in that dialogue and that policy creation process just because you're a delegate. And then Wild takes those resolutions that come out of the Congress to international forums that we are members of and say, look, civil society, there were 700 people that voted on this. Civil society say they want this. So this institution needs to take it seriously. And I think of the 12 resolutions that came out of Wild 12, really the one that encompasses what I'm talking about now is called the HASAPA Declaration, Resolution 1, which works on, one, reinterpreting wilderness, but two, making commitments as a wilderness community to what we're going to do to defend an interpretation of wilderness that is just, that is inclusive, and that ensures that no more human rights are violated in the name of wilderness any longer. So I'm super proud of that. I'm super proud of every single one of the resolutions that came out of Wild 12. We've interpreted those resolutions into 4 motions that we're now advancing at the IUCN, and Adam can share more about those motions. So we're really excited about that, and that's taking up a lot of our time right now. But that's kind of the general summary of what Wild does, and what most recently everyone on this call might be interested in knowing more about.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. And at this time, I'd love to invite Bob. So Bob, we're friends. We've been friends for a long time. All of us, all 3 of us on the call. And Bob's engaged in not only the World Wilderness Congress as the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Wilderness, but because of his own passions and interests. And Bob was extremely instrumental in pulling off a successful symposium for the World Wilderness Congress, in which we had 300 presenters that focused on different tracks and shared different knowledge and experiences and perspectives from all around the world. Bob was reviewed many abstracts, and is in the process of developing proceedings as an outcome of the World Wilderness Congress. So, Bob, kind of over to you. Not only to kind of highlight, well, to first jump in on the World Wilderness Congress, since that's where we kind of left off, but your involvement in wilderness as a whole at the university that you're at. And also, what made you interested to be the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Wilderness and also engage in the World Wilderness Congress? Just kind of throw some questions, whatever feels
Sure.
right for you to dive in on.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think, here at Central Michigan University, I'm a professor that focuses on wilderness and visitor use management. Um, and, really kind of, where the passion for wilderness came from was it was trying to identify how do we take care of and protect and understand these important places and spaces. And again, that relationship that we as individuals have with that. And how that's kind of changed, over time. So that's what originally got me kind of connected to, the wilderness community and understanding some of the experiences that were there. Um, is that kind of connects to the International Journal of Wilderness, or IJW for short. It was one of the first journals I was actually published in, so with some of my mentors of Alan Watson and Bill Borey, and Chad Dawson, having that opportunity to first talk about it as a young researcher and a young scientist, trying to kind of understand those things. So have been involved with that for over 10 years now, and been involved with the World Wilderness Congress in a couple of different opportunities. And as Adam was saying, as we look at Wild 12, we had a really great team that was working together globally to come up with the symposium. So we were able to look at topics that were addressing Indigenous communities and Indigenous knowledge, but also then having lots of opportunities to speak to, what does the practitioner or the advocate or the field staff need when it comes to wilderness science and wilderness management. So we had lots of representation from some great federal agencies, and including the staff at the Elda Leopold Wilderness Research Institute. So we're talking about collaboration, talking about relationship building, also looking at different ways to kind of address designations. So a lot of those different things coming across as we looked at science and techniques and collaboration and partnerships, all of these different tracks within the Congress. And as Adam mentioned, right now we're on schedule to hopefully have the proceedings available to the public in early 2026. So hopefully in that first quarter is kind of where we're on track as we continue to work through all the great submissions that we've been able to have.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. And then I'm gonna even pitch myself here. What brought me here today? And again, well, I'm with the Wild Foundation, and my role is the senior principal for conservation networks. And I served as the deputy executive organizer for Wild 12. But really, I'm passionate about wilderness and people. It was such an honor to be a part of the World Wilderness Congress and all of these wide networks across the world. So we brought together over 700 people from all around the world, about 36 countries, down to Rapid City, and through those discussions, they were led by the host, the Shuchangu Treaty Council, the Ochechi Shakuin Oyate, and also some other members of the IUCN, the World Commission of Protected Areas, Wilderness Specialist Group experts, and many of the land management agencies and professors from all around the world were represented. One of the tasks that I have is managing the Wilderness Specialist Group, in which Amy and Bob are a part of as well. And that unique group was pulled together at the World Wilderness Congress as well, and instrumental on drafting the HISAPA resolution, in which you'll see in the link below. And we continue to pull in experts all across the world to help inform not only young professionals, but conservationists and managers that are interested in adopting or incorporating Wilderness 1B protected area category into the protected area system. And so it is such a special honor to introduce many experts across the world to have these dialogues and conversation about how to approach such a task at hand. And so during one of the outcomes of the World Wilderness Congress was the Wilderness Specialist Group pulled together both the U.S. Forest Service members and the Ministry of Environment in Germany to have a conversation about wilderness and where they are at with their own protected area system. And from through those dialogues, it sparked collaboration between Germany and the U.S. Forest Service to have ongoing dialogue and webinars about specific topics under wilderness conservation, such as wildfire management. And so I'd love to toss this kind of back to Bob, as Bob has been invited as a academic to share his knowledge on wilderness management and conservation as part of that letter of intent between Germany and US. If you just share a little bit about that ongoing initiative. I know our friends from Germany were hoping to jump on the call today to share the value of that relationship.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's been a great opportunity. It again is kind of, I think, a testament to our community as we're able to bring people together. What started as 4 or 5 of us sitting at a coffee table in the middle of the conference hall on one of the last few days of the Congress, to now this relationship that's been going on for nearly a year now between us and the ministry in Germany. With great partners like, Dusty's part of our core team as well, and Chris Armitage from the Leopold Institute. But really, what we're trying to do, but with this partnership, is how can we have more information and knowledge exchange across our two governments and our countries, and understand, how can we better conserve and manage this resource. As we have kind of had this relationship, it's been interesting to think back to, some of those original understandings of forestry and land management came from Gifford Pinchot and his experience in Germany. So, seeing those connections of Germany and its land management and its forestry management, to how that had an influence on Pinchot and Leopold and other individuals, to now come full circle back and talk to them again about different approaches to wilderness, has been a great experience. So up until this point, we've had several webinars. So we talked a little bit about wilderness history and how that's been different across both of our countries. We recently had one talking about wildland fire and the role of prescribed fire and fire management. And we're looking in the future then to start moving to some other topics, such as wildlife management and conservation as well. So it's been a great opportunity. Hopefully in the future too, we'll have some more opportunities to have some on the ground training and experience between the two countries as we kind of keep moving this partnership forward over the next several years.
Thanks, Bob. And I was just Amy and Wild Foundation has been engaged in that partnership too, and is really honored to support that. And kind of just pitching over to Amy, how does it make you feel? I know you were able to join some of those webinars and actually see what the World Wilderness Congress, the intention of the World Wilderness Congress, and how it's been carried forth throughout generations, sparked and see the dialogue that it continues to foster across borders and across seas as well. So
Yeah, so three things here, and yeah, I've been delighted to join those conversations, Adam. But I also want to underscore the importance and the need for these conversations. There's a lot of skepticism around the world and within the environmental movement about the need for having more gatherings and more talking, and I totally and completely understand that need. And why can't we just do things as opposed to have to talk about stuff so much? But I also want to be careful with that too, as I think a lot of it could be undermining very necessary dialogue that has to occur before action can happen. And in the case of Germany and the United States, the dialogue that is occurring is really valuable and interesting because there's two completely different sets of conditions institutionally and culturally, as well as geographically and ecologically, that kind of define the different approaches to wilderness. And I think that has a lot of overlap for understanding better and being able to articulate better the limitations that different regions face when it comes to protecting wilderness, and also how to get around some of those limitations. So, for example, um, Germany's far smaller geographically than the United States, and they have far less wilderness that remains. Which one I think is very interesting for understanding how do we um, foster connection with the wilderness in urban areas. because people can't protect something that they can't relate to. And I think there's a lot of learning that can happen around around that. But also, I mean, just in terms of the fire dialogue too, in the United States, we can have a completely different approach to fire management because we have so much more wilderness. Whereas in a place where you have very small amounts of wilderness, you're going to be hesitant to lose any of that to anything, even if it's a natural wildfire. So, there's a lot of learning that can happen in these sessions, but also, as a social scientist, my background is in social movement building, both as a practitioner and as a scholar. And one of the most successful social movements in the world has been uh, basically Christian influence in politics. And one of my hypotheses for why that works so well is because they meet every week. They go to church every week. They talk, they share their priorities, they have a community. And I think that we, as a wilderness community, can learn more from that, more opportunities to gather together and to kind of come together around shared values and talk about how we're going to manifest those in the world will make us more effective in what we want to do. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I found these gatherings really, the World Wilderness Congress, obviously very important for building this global wilderness community, but also the dialogue happening between Germany and the United States.
Thank you, Amy. And so I just want to welcome those of you that have joined recently in the last like 10 minutes. Glad that you could be here with us. We're just we're sharing kind of an overview of what really brought us into this work a little bit, or the work that we're doing, both globally, and kind of sharing some voices of our friends and colleagues from abroad that weren't able to join us today. And we'll be opening up for questions following this discussion. So please do jot them down or put those in the chat. The theme is global voices for wilderness, and some of the ongoing initiatives. So please do ask us any questions. So kind of moving on back to you, Bob, about the International Journal of Wilderness, pulling all these communities together, these networks together, not only to convene and have dialogue in person, which is absolutely critical. I think everybody on this call can agree to the importance of meeting in person, that it adds a level of connection that is hard to gather virtually. But in addition to meeting in person, there's other ways to continue to advance our conversation so that more people can learn from experiences and implement that into their daily routines, whether that's a manager or a leader making high-level decisions. And part of that is having a journal, a place where you can publish that information. And the Wild Foundation is really proud to facilitate the International Journal of Wilderness, in which Bob Dvorak is the editor-in-chief, for those of you who are joining here recently. And so, Bob, could you tell us a little bit about the journal, kind of how you approach the review process, the publication process, all these relationships that you've formed throughout your years as editor-in-chief, and how this community that's on the call here can engage, and how we can amplify their voices and increase awareness of the stuff that they've been working on their day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think it's nice to point out that IJW celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2024, and really the ability to get there has been through the great support and relationship with the Wild Foundation, and also all of the strong efforts that John Handy and Chad Dawson and Alan Watson have done over that long period of time. So when I was given the opportunity to take some leadership, I was handed something that was in very great shape, and had a lot of love and care over that long period of time. I think what makes IJW very unique and also very important is it's a journal where the target audience is stewards and practitioners and advocates, and any of those individuals that are trying to have that important impact on international conservation, designated wilderness, and wild spaces. So, in comparison to your traditional academic journal that many of you might be familiar with, that process can be extremely long. It can be difficult and challenging, and the gatekeeping that takes place, when it comes to knowledge and science, comes with its own barriers and challenges. I think what IJW does really well is it tries to provide that space to have that voice, and it allows us to be nimble in a way that many other journals can't. So we're able to talk about relevant topics and things that are very pressing, in a very much kind of a quick turnaround and a possibility. Um, so as you look at some of our most recent issues, we've been able to talk about eDNA and how that might have an effect as we look at wildlife management and species diversity and ecosystem integrity. We've had a kind of ongoing conversations about technology, and particularly talking a lot about AI and what are the implications going to be for wilderness management. And when we have these virtual spaces that are starting to dominate culture, what's the role for wilderness, or how might that have an impact on wilderness? So we've been able to have those dialogues that have spurred out into some different ways too, whether that's through the Voices of Wilderness podcast that's sponsored by the Wild Foundation, and having those dialogues, and in a couple other ways as well. But we've also had some ongoing series such as Wilderness Babble, where we've been able to really look at the language of wilderness, the word, the concept across lots of different cultures, lots of different countries. So we've talked about it from China and Australia and South America. We have an upcoming piece that's going to look at it from the Sami culture, and how it works in the northern parts of Finland and Scandinavia. So it's our chance to look at wilderness in a lot of different ways, and be able to address a lot of different topics and ideas. And I think one of the things that is, kind of just to wrap it up a little bit, that it's unique again about the journal is, compared to other ones, our entire history, aside from the current issue, is completely free and available online. So if you're looking as a scientist or an advocate or as a manager for this resource, you can go to ijw.org, and the ability to go back and look and see over these last 30 years of what's been the conversation, and how have individuals across federal agencies in the US, but across international contexts, been able to talk about it as well. So many of you that are on the call today, and that are associated with the US federal agencies, you have IP address and access as part of your sponsorships and support from the federal agencies. But again, also having that archive there as well. So, we're excited for being able to continue providing, this resource and this venue for the wilderness community. We're going to be having a special issue with some of the presenters and authors from Wild 12 coming up here in September, and then looking forward to some interesting things in December as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. And in addition to the International Journal of Wilderness, the Wild Foundation has an archive of longstanding publications such as the wilderness management textbooks, and tackling some of the challenging questions, publishing around wilderness law, policy. There's a handbook on international wilderness law and policy. If you haven't seen it or read it, I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful book, and quite dense for a short book. But I'm just wondering, Amy, if you wanted to speak to, the Wild Foundation, and why Wild values not only the in-person dialogue, but also the importance of publication and tracking the history of wilderness conservation, both not just nationally in the US, but globally.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to go back in time to the 1960s. Our founders were two men, Ian Player, a white South African game ranger, and his Zulu mentor, Makubu Ntombela. And they did something that hadn't been done before. They took the first species off of the International Endangered Species list. That was by saving it. That was the southern white rhino. And the lesson that they took away from this was that they could go around and save a lot of species and win a lot of battles, but ultimately lose the war. Because it was really through Makubu's insights that they understood that all of this was happening because of a broken relationship with nature. And so it was Makubu who called for a global indaba, a global gathering of the tribes to coordinate around shared values and actions in order to heal our relationship with nature. And Wild has carried that ethic forward. And so, like, we are obviously engaged with the symptoms of the crisis that's caused by our broken relationship with nature. But we also want to get at the root of that relationship too, and address that and understand why it is we've become so unbalanced in a relationship with society's closest ally, nature. And so all of these publications and these meetings ultimately circle around that, trying to get at the root cause and trying to understand how it is we don't just heal the symptoms, but we address the root cause.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Um, and with that, so I guess it kind of backing up and we've been able to provide a little bit about the Wild Foundation and the history of the World Wilderness Congress, but more so, even bigger than that, we are carrying the work of so many people um, over decades, maybe even more than that, hundreds of years, and it's global around the wilderness. And it's such an honor to carry this network, these relationships and friendships forward, and to see how we can assist each other to address some of these major challenges that we're facing today. And so we've shared a few of areas where you could read and learn about some of the challenges that people have faced, some of the solutions that folks have tried or I guess provided to address those challenges. We've shared with you some potential events, not only in the past, but that will be upcoming where you can meet with people. And so I want to leave you with where you could actually sign up and potentially be more engaged, not just on the national level, but in the international level, if that's something of interest to you. So if you'd like to track the next World Wilderness Congress and where that might be hosted, that occurs every 4 years, and we're already looking ahead to Wild 13 in 2028 and 2029 when the next Congress will be held and where. And then also, I want to invite you to consider being a part of the Wilderness Specialist Group. It's a unique group of experts from all around the world that are there. There's no strong commitment as far as time-wise. We meet annually, once or twice a year, the group. But you can put calls out in seeking expertise and advice, or you could share your expertise and advice with folks from all around the world. And an example of that is a friend that I know here in the United States lived in Cameroon for several years. And some members from Cameroon stepped up and put a call out during the last call that they would love to consider opportunities for weaving in a Category 1B into the protected area system. So it was fun to pull together some friends in the United States and some friends from the UK to sit down and have a dialogue with Cameroon and figure out how to potentially move that stuff along and to know that they're not alone in their efforts. So please do consider joining the Wilderness Specialist Group.
So, humans, we've had a very long and evolving relationship with the wild spaces that we depend on, right? And it's the basis for how we view the world around us. It shapes our cultures and religions around the world. 101 years ago today was the first wilderness set aside by the U.S. Forest Service. The Gila Wilderness is 101 years old today. And I'm sure the folks that were doing that work, this was something different than the agency had been used to doing. And they probably felt very alone in what they were doing, right? They didn't have a network to reach out to and get ideas. And so it's been great. It's great to be at a point in history now where we have a great network like the Wilderness Specialist Group where we can reach out and ask for help. And so my question is, around networking and how we can apply what's happening in the globe in our own sort of backyard, if you will. I remember, last time I was on a ranger district, I felt very alone, even though I was in a great agency and I had, forest level support and I knew that folks were doing the same work that I was around the country. I didn't know who they were and I didn't know how to stay connected with them. And so thank you so much for sharing the Wilderness Specialist Group. So my question is, what are some outcomes of Wild 12 and other work that you're doing that people in the field can directly take and start to apply and learn from? What are things that they can do to make their job more enjoyable and help them feel more connected to the globe?
Great. Well, there's a few things just in terms of everyone, what they can do to foster that connection. One is seriously consider joining the Wilderness Specialist Group at the IUCN. This was a hard fought institutional toehold in the IUCN, believe it or not. About 2 decades ago, the IUCN was not thrilled about the concept of wilderness. And we fought for this, and it is now the primary mechanism for surfacing wilderness dialogue within that institution. And so the more people we have in that group that are ready to volunteer and ready to lend their voices as well as their ideas, it's really significant and really important. The second thing is, if you know of anyone under the age of 35 who is in kind of the starting their career in the conservation space and wants to really accelerate their knowledge and capacity, I would encourage you checking out Coalition Wild and its mentorship program. One, we are always short of mentors. Every year, about, I don't know, we get about 600 or 700 applications from young people around the world who, as Dusty was just talking about, feel really alone. These are young people who are on the front lines of the sixth mass extinction. They are watching deforestation and extinction happen in their communities in Africa, in Asia, in South America. Many of them don't have the kind of the orthodox background that we benefit from in the global north, access to funding and universities and things like that. And so being a mentor to them gives them the encouragement and the companionship that they often desperately need in order to continue their efforts. So we're always looking for mentors. We get like basically there's an imbalance of like 1 to 6 on the mentor-mentee front. So we always need to find more mentors, and we would encourage you to either apply for a mentor or to recommend a young person that you know that might want a mentor to apply for the Coalition Wild program. The third thing is I would totally sign up for Wild's email list, especially around the World Wilderness Congress. We haven't officially started planning Wild 13 yet, but we certainly talk about it a lot. And this is going to be such a fantastic place for you to meet people from all over the world. And also, if there are really important initiatives that you think the world should be talking about, to advance those initiatives at Wild 13. And we'll be looking at sometime between 2028 and 2031 for the next World Wilderness Congress. So, just stay informed in that way. In terms of on the ground work that is happening that dovetails a lot with Wild 13. So I wish I don't have my phone with me right now, but I would love to show you the pictures we're getting out of the Western Amazon. Like I'm constantly showing them to Adam, and he's probably sick of them. Um, but we've just started ranger trainings with an indigenous territory there. So we are working with Chingeta Wildlife and Langland Conservation in order to train, to unite essentially traditional indigenous knowledge about the rainforest with contemporary practices and standards. And there are many folks within the Yawanawa territory in the Western Amazon, as well as the surrounding regions, who care about the forest, who know that the forest and their livelihoods go hand in hand, but who don't have access to resources and who don't who just haven't had the training experience. So we have folks there now training them to be rangers. Like just today I got this video of like 17 young men like running in formation behind their trainer, and they're learning how to survive in the forest for weeks at a time so that they can monitor both their territory for illegal incursions and activities, as well as help track biodiversity so we have better understanding of that area of the forest. And I don't know, we're more and more, we've done this with the Molly Elephant Project. We will likely be doing something similar, not identical, but similar in the northern boreal forests. I just find working with local communities so rewarding, and empowering them to be the best stewards of nature that they can be. And also when you do that, you remove some of the isolation and loneliness around it, because that community then has a bunch of members in it who've basically had similar educations and can have more dialogue, and express more values both in their actions and in their words around wilderness. So I think just working around the world with local communities and building up communities where we can to deal with this is personally where I find a lot of reward.
I'll just add to what Amy said as far as, uh, to kind of address your question, Dusty, on some of the outcomes of Wild 12. A lot of the dialogue that sparked what Amy was just sharing about the Yawanawa tribe in the Amazon. And started at the World Wilderness Congress, leading up to it and at the Congress, and those calls out for help or for that's all it takes, So I guess everybody on the call, um, personally, I found that when I'm struggling with something, and I feel like it's just myself, as soon as I, build up the courage to drop, any of the fear or anxiety around the what I'm doing and reach out and ask somebody, it seems to break down all kinds of barriers just to ask the world for what I need. And so I just encourage anybody on the call to do that. It might not look like anybody on the call here, but it might be somebody that's your friend or nearby, and just kind of share what you really want and or what you need. And yeah, the world usually responds somehow. But we're happy to also make those connections. So please do let us know.
I really want to thank Adam and Bob and Amy for the time you take out of your day and the great work that you do around the globe. Truly love the work that you're doing, and we benefited from it every day. We may not realize it and may not always be measurable, but the work that you're doing does have a benefit that helps us all. And again, just thank you for the work you're doing to connect us all together.